We'd love to train you all. Otherwise, what I'll do is, I'll now open this to public comment. If someone would like to address the council, we'd invite you.
I did share with Dave, and I will quickly, I just had 2 comments.
State your name and.
Oh, sorry, Kathy Palmer, 1886 South, 830 West, Syracuse, of course, that's what we're talking about. With commercial at the bottom of an apartment complex, it's only successful downtown, City Creek, Station Park, where you can walk, bike, or ride tracks to your work. Do you know what I mean? It's a whole, it just would not work there at Antelope, just not even close. If you're gonna build something like a station park on a smaller scale, sure, that kind of thing would work. But anyway, commercial at the bottom, that doesn't really work. Plus, egress, ingress into a parking lot for an apartment complex, and Layton City requires, and I'm not saying you have to do what Layton City does, but they've got tons of apartments. Too many for me. Anyway, that's why I moved here. But anyway, they will not allow a second ingress egress into a parking lot. It is just not, they just won't allow it. And they do require 2. You must have it 2 different ways in and out. And that's,
I'm sorry.
Into an existing parking lot of another commercial development.
yeah, into a parking lot. Yeah, it has to go onto a road. Has to go onto a road. And that's why up there by Meters, they made that Seasons, a new apartment complex that really fronts on Hillfield Road. They maintain the driveway and had to give access to Neters and the Habit. Is that what it's called? The Habit, the burger place and stuff. Those businesses, but the apartment complex has to maintain that, because that's their second ingress egress, is onto Antelope through that business segment. Now that kind of intrigued me. But Kim Weaver's been at this for a long time. And plus, where would the school bus pick up the kids? In the parking lot? They're not gonna pick them up on Antelope. The only other place would be by the liquor store or by McDonald's. I mean, it just doesn't really, it doesn't make sense. And I just really urge you, quit trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't work. When there's other places way better, well suited, you know, plus my point is, high density is not affordable housing. It's not. It's the total opposite. And I mark my words, I hope I live long enough to say, I told you so. I hope, I'm serious, I think within 5 years or less, we're gonna see that this huge building of apartment complexes from Provo on north was a mistake. We have way too much of that kind of housing. If they wanted to build townhomes that were affordable, smaller townhomes, or whatever, that's a different story. We do need affordable housing, badly. But high density apartment buildings are not affordable. They're the opposite. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. You don't want to be open public meeting trained, huh?
Pardon?
You don't want to be open and public meeting trained. It goes on a resume really well.
No.
Anybody else like to address?
I stayed till 10 o'clock last time, remember?
Okay, and sorry, I was just reading so fast in the beginning, I had timed myself, so I knew I could fit it in 3 minutes if I talked fast. Just hearing you guys talk, and I've met with each of you, and I really appreciate that, because it's much easier to have discussion back and forth than just, you know, shoot an email and not hear back. So I really appreciate that. Just hearing you guys talk, one of my concerns would be if you have a requirement for commercial on one property and then a high density, however dense, on another property, but if they put a commercial property somewhere not in an area that would also be appropriate for a high density, but you require that it's within a certain distance, that could cause problems. So I just see that could come up as a problem if you have a commercial building built somewhere and there's nowhere around there that would also be appropriate for high density or housing. So that was just one of my concerns that I noticed, but I'm sure we'll more things, and I'll send you guys an email. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll share. Thank you.
Thank you for your interest in the city. Appreciate it.
You gonna go?
Go ahead.
Oh, same issue. Bill West, 1275, 1475, you know, that area. A couple of the comments that Mr. Godfrey made. People are leaving, we're leaving Ogden. Within a block of that proposed project, 2 houses have sold, 2 more are for sale. It will eventually decrease the property values as we go away. He said that they would look at what's broken, and I would urge you not to break something before you look at it. So appreciate, I love the comments tonight. I think these have been even better than the parks, the whole, again, I really appreciate what our city council and mayor are doing for our city. So please keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Bill happens to also be a ham operator.
Yes, yes, yes.
Council.
And I know Jordan.
I'm Jordan Bigler, 728 West, 2150 South, Syracuse. I'll just take a moment of your time. I actually was really grateful to be here today and listen to your guys' comments. It is a complicated issue, and I would just say, and I'm talking specifically about the development right by McDonald's there in Syracuse. I would just say my thoughts is that that is the beginning of the city, the Syracuse city. As you enter the corridor, as we plan what we want Syracuse to look like, and I love the idea. I mean, I'm a planner. I love, you can fit lots of great stuff in lots of small areas, and you can make it look good if you really have a good plan. So I love the vision of having someone come in and say, hey, this is what we want the city to look like. This is what we want it to be. And it does matter where the building, you know, how many cars you're gonna see, the first thing that you see, and it's gonna be important. And I would just say that you guys are in a situation right now where it's like, you only get one chance to do it. Because once a building goes in, you're not taking that down. That's not gonna change. And so I just encourage you guys to really think about how that's gonna look and how that is gonna feel, and just really think about what we want Syracuse to look like, and how we want that to feel, and then move forward with that plan. Because I felt like in a lot of cases, Syracuse, we don't know who we are. We are this old, I loved when we moved to Syracuse. I mean, the people are just so genuine, you know, there's the farmers, that's where I grew up, and that's one of the reasons I love Syracuse so much. And I just don't want to lose that completely, but I also love growth. So I love the vision. We just have to make sure that we have a good vision of what we want to do, and just don't allow contractors that have like, oh, well, I've got this opportunity to make money, which I totally understand. I'm an entrepreneur, but don't just go ad hoc to whatever plan comes up. Have a vision, have a plan for the city, and then execute that. And sometimes that'll mean a no, and sometimes it'll mean a yes. But anyway, that's all I have to say. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Anyone else like to address? No. Hearing and seeing none, I'll close public comment. And now for the reason we've met.
Man, what an
Now
introduction.
for
Thank you, Mayor.
Paul Harvey used to say, now you know the rest of the story.
Well, for those of you who have been here for more than a year, the law hasn't changed. So I'm going to cover a lot of the same ground because there's no new ground to cover, honestly. I think the last time they changed the ethics code was
I'll bet you can
7
do it
years ago. I did pare it down a little bit more. Every year I pare a little more down.
Less is more.
Okay, so as always, when we talk about open meetings, the general presumption is meetings of public bodies must be open to the public, unless there's an exception that applies. So within that phrase, there's 3 things you need to understand. What is a meeting? What is a public body? And then which exceptions apply and when. It is defined in the code. For our training, of course, the council is a public body, so the planning commission, so would the arts council, really any body that's created by the ordinance. So if we have an ordinance that says you shall have this type of body, then it is a public body. And if it's, has any authority to make any decisions regarding public's business, or if it's supported in whole or in part by tax revenue. A meeting means it's a convening of a quorum of the public body by one with authority for the purposes of discussing, receiving comments from the public about, or acting upon a matter over which the body has jurisdiction. So you could parse that up quite a bit. You could say, okay, well, if you have a quorum and it wasn't convened by someone with authority, who has authority to convene the council? The mayor or 2 council members that could call a meeting. So if you have a, and it has to be under sort of specific circumstances that 2 council members could do it. And so if you have a quorum that are together for social purposes, maybe they play basketball together, or they have lunch, but they're not talking about city business, that's not a meeting. And so, but if you're at a meeting where maybe the public are giving comment about something, and you've got a quorum there, and the mayor called the meeting, then it's a public meeting. So, for instance, last year when we did the Vision 2050, that's why we had it as a published meeting, is because we had a council, we were all invited, we were receiving public comment and training public, and the mayor had called it. But again, social gatherings don't count as long as you don't discuss city business. So that's why, again, if there are social gatherings that are not public meetings, I'm often there to make sure that people don't discuss city business. Because it's really tempting, because that's what you talk about. When you 5 get together, that's what you talk about is city business. So it can be difficult to like say, hey, wait, we're not talking about that. We're going to talk about
Why we know each
baseball. We're going to talk about something else, not really city. So, but when we've had those social gatherings, it's been great. No one has crossed that line, and I appreciate that.
That's, brings me to a song we used to sing when we were kids, is every party needs a pooper, that's why we invited you.
That's still song.
Thank you for that.
That was inappropriate.
Paul, I still like you, even if you're a lawyer.
I don't like parties, so it's true. I have a party. Yeah, I haven't been for a long time. Notices and meetings. We do publish an annual schedule. We have to notice every meeting at least 24 hours before the meeting. Now, if there's an emergency like an earthquake or something, then there are provisions where you just give as much notice as you can. But generally, 24 hours is what we need. If there's a topic that's not on the agenda, then we're not supposed to talk about it, and you certainly can't make a final decision about something that's not on it. Now, there are some exceptions. If a citizen brings it up, then you could briefly address it, but you can't act on it. So if a citizen were to come to you in public comment and say, I would like you to change an ordinance, and you said, you know what, let's do it right now because this is really important. And you said, let's pull up the ordinance and let's change it and let's vote on it right now. You can't do that. But what you could do is you could say, let's put that on the next business meeting. Or if it's really pressing, let's have a special meeting to address it. Later, yeah,
Later,
not at that
a
meeting.
published date.
At least 24 hours later, right?
Yes.
So you can give notice and people who are interested can see it. We do give notice, Cassie does this, we post it on our website, we post it on the public notice website of the state, we put it in the newspaper, that there are meetings. We also post it around City Hall and the community center and public areas. So people who are interested can find the information. It's not too hard, especially if you know where to look.
Why like, weren't they looking at trying to get it out of
They're trying.
newspapers?
They're
Just
trying.
because no one subscribes
There's no one-
anymore?
But the newspaper was lobbying very hard.
But we don't pay, this isn't, so the notice of the agenda, we don't pay for it, it's a community service that
Oh,
the
that's
newspaper
true.
provides. They also have Utah Legal's website, that is the attempt to eliminate public hearing notices in newspapers. So all of the newspapers in the state they kind of work together on the Legal's website, so that's independent of the noticing website, 2 separate issues.
Yeah, so we send an agenda to the papers as a courtesy, and we don't pay for that, but we send it to them in case they want to publish it, or
Right.
then at least the reporters know what's going on and they can come and cover our interesting hearings. Agendas, when you look at agendas, we do need to have some level of specificity, but we don't have to have, like the whole item called out. You just have to be specific enough that people who look at the agenda kind of know what you're going to talk about. And again, if it's not on the agenda, then you cannot take any final actions on it. When you look at the code, there's no requirement for packets. We love packets. The reason we do is because it really helps the meeting move along. It helps the council and the public to be educated about what we're talking about. But if something's not in the packet, it doesn't matter legally. So we could have something on the agenda and not have a packet item. I think we've got a good policy here, though, of having packets, and it really has made the meetings go a lot more smoothly to have those. So I endorse it, but again, state code doesn't require it. So if there was something that was missing or incorrect in the packet, doesn't
Just a
matter.
quick question,
Mhm.
because I heard this from someone else at sewer board. They say we try to make our items vague, our agenda items vague, so that people don't ask too many questions before the meeting.
Hmm.
What's the limit on that? How specific do you have to be, and
The code says enough to basically have someone know what you're gonna be talking about, so
That
you
that
can be
sounds
pretty
kinda
vague.
shady.
it does, but it's not our city and it's not sewer board, it's
Yes.
just,
Yeah.
they just said we would try to be a little vague on stuff that we know we're gonna get pushback on. I'm like, really?
The
Get
code
away with
uses,
that.
the code uses the exact words reasonable specificity, so, I mean, it's a little bit subjective, but I think,
Okay.
the average person knows what reasonable specificity is.
If your intent is to avoid the public being
Avoid
aware of
public clamor,
something,
yeah.
I think you crossed the reasonable boundary.
I agree with you.
Right.
I asked the question so I was more informed, because I didn't agree.
And
Get
I-
after 'em.
I wanna thank Cassie for her work with department heads and putting those packets together. It is a tremendous amount of work.
I can only
She has
Thank you,
to,
imagine.
she has
Cassie.
to really remind us a lot.
I-
Do you
I-
need a
We're bad at
whip?
it.
Cause we
We-
could probably
we
find some
forget.
funding for that.
So,
Bless
yeah,
you.
she does a great job.
I hear the whip crack.
Good.
So while we're talking about agendas and things, so on our agendas, on the business meetings, we do have council announcements. And I just wanna make sure that, that we address, make sure that we stay within the proper bounds. You know, so as you know, we have the amount, part for council announcements, often it's discussions about other boards that you're sitting on, or city events that's happening, or something, that's pressing that you wanna talk about. It's tempting to have that council announcement segue into a policy discussion. And we want to avoid that because it wasn't noticed and the
Right.
public aren't notified that we're going to be talking about this. So if there's something that needs a policy discussion, which might happen, if you let the mayor know before the meeting, the Wednesday before the meeting, then it can get on the agenda. And you can even have like if you want to tell us what you want to talk about, we can have a staff memo or something, or you could put your comments in an email or something. We can put it in the packet so people are prepared to talk about it, so it's not just sort of on the fly. And that can be hard to remember that. Or you can always ask for something to be placed on a future agenda, and then we can talk about it.
I thought you could put something on the agenda within 24 hours of the meeting.
We can, yeah, but if you really want to get in the packet,
Oh, okay.
that's the Wednesday deadline
We
that
don't
we,
want
that we
it to
abide by.
I think he's just saying so that everyone can be prepared for the discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, like we can amend the agenda 24 hours in advance of the meeting, but.
Yeah,
Preferably.
yeah, preferably, yeah, do it the week before, and then
Makes
everyone will be
sense.
able to think about it.
That was the question from pickleball.
Well, and just to clarify between that, so, you guys, a couple of you did talk to her and refer her to me yesterday, and so, just so you guys understand the information that I gave to her, she was thinking that we had to amend the agenda, and so she was worried about that 24-hour deadline. And the item was already on the agenda, and there was already information in the
Just
packet, she
additional.
just wanted to provide additional information, so that wasn't a problem
Yeah,
yesterday.
and that technically was easier because then you already had record of it, you know, for the city. Because sometimes people will bring information and yet
Yeah.
you don't have a record of.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was good.
So closed meetings are permissible under the code, but they're very limited in what we can talk about. So here are things you can talk about in a closed meeting. So character, professional competence, or the physical or mental health of an individual. Strategy regarding in litigation, and in that case, you really want to have a person who's threatened litigation, and not just saying, well, hey, if we do something, we could get sued. That's not enough. It needs to really be that you know we've identified a party that is planning on suing. And then strategy regarding the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property if public discussion would disclose values of property or prevent the city from completing the transaction on the best possible terms. Sometimes when we talk about purchasing property, it's tempting to go into other areas that are related. It's important to really focus on its strategy related to purchase, exchange, or lease of real property, or strategy regarding the sale of real property. Anything related to security personnel or devices or things like that, we would have a closed meeting for that because we don't want to have that out in the public. Or if there's any investigations or criminal misconduct, then that would happen in a closed meeting. And I don't know if I put this in my trainings before, but if a member of the public body who knowingly or intentionally violates that is guilty of class misdemeanor. It doesn't include attorneys though, so I'm in good shape.
You're good to keep us on task on this.
And you get a community
I would
apparently.
love to understand that better though, because there are times when I've heard past council members, and I'm not talking about anyone in specific, that talk about things that happened in a past closed session, and I just wonder, what's the limitation on that? Because
You wanna prosecute?
no, but I mean, I'm just trying to understand, it's a misdemeanor, what do you do? I mean, I've even been in meetings when people bring things up and I'm going, that was just closed session, how did that happen? But we don't ever do anything about it, I don't know.
When it comes to boundaries, I mean, really, we need to keep each other accountable and hold on. That's why I'll raise my hand and say, let's make sure we keep this in bounds. If it looks like we're gonna stray into territory we shouldn't. And sometimes it's, you wanna talk about it and I interrupt and it's frustrating, I'm sure. If there's something you wanna talk about, again, we can talk about a lot of things in public meetings. And that's where our communication should be happening on the majority of the business that happens.
Well, question with that, say for instance, a decision is made, it's published and a decision's been made and it's become public knowledge and then you vote and the matter is settled.
Yeah, at
Those
that
other
point, it's
communications,
public.
are those other closed meetings though still confidential? That's my perception.
Yeah, they're still closed.
That's what I thought.
Oh, even if decisions have been made that are in the public, anything that's discussed in closed stays closed.
Correct.
Which means maybe the reasons for why it happened, if they weren't disclosed in public meeting, they're still private.
It still needs to stay.
Yeah, it's closed. Yeah, I mean, there are ways if someone really thinks that you're doing something wrong, they could challenge it. There's a whole court proceeding, the court listens to the recordings and stuff and decides whether it was proper or not. But, that hasn't happened.
It's good
Here and now.
clarification.
Yeah.
When it comes to records, we do keep written minutes of the recording, as you know, because you approve them every business meeting. That includes all those items that are listed here. And state code still says that minutes are still the official record of the proceeding, not the recording. Although, when there's litigation, they always get the recording and transcripts and they always refer to the recording a lot. So minutes.
It's the preferred, isn't it?
Technically it's the official record, but I think, courts and people will still look at the recording to look for intent. That may not have made its way in the minutes.
Okay.
When it comes to electronic message transmissions, of course we can, members of the public body can email, right, other people on the public body outside of public meetings times. That's okay. But you gotta be careful where you don't wanna violate the spirit of the law, or maybe the letter of it as well, because we are required under the same, this code to take your actions openly and conduct deliberations openly. So if you're conducting it via email, it's not very open because the whole city is not privy to what you're talking about. So if a matter is discussion by the body, we need to put it on an agenda and talk about it in public meetings. And again, if a topic is really, really, really urgent, we can have special meetings. If it's super urgent, that's possible. This came I think a few years ago where people were asking about, hey, what if I'm watching for public comments or people are on Facebook talking and I just want to see what they have to say and they're listening to the meeting and they're commenting. We really don't want to allow that. During your meetings, public comment is limited to the public comment periods, and the public body may not communicate with or receive comment from others regarding the subject matter of that meeting during the meeting, because you're supposed to be deliberating publicly. And if you're deliberating with information that's secret and that no one else knows of, and especially when it comes to an administrative decision like a preliminary plat or a site plan or something like that, the applicant would not know that you're receiving this information and they wouldn't have an opportunity to rebut it. And especially in an administrative capacity, if you're acting in that capacity, they're entitled to know everything that you're relying upon. So, and it's also unfair to people who are here to sit patiently and listen to the whole meeting, or who are, they're here they've made the effort to come here, they're limited to 3 minutes during this period, and then other people are allowed to just chime in whenever they feel like. And definitely, don't communicate with people during the meeting about the topics at hand. Obviously, if you're texting and saying, wow, this meeting is going really late, Paul won't shut up, meeting will be late, that's different from, hey, I'm thinking about.
Can you read this from here?
Yes. Yes,
I don't text
I've got
very
very
often,
good
but it's
vision now.
usually, I got milk on your way home.
Yeah, that's usually what it is for me.
Yeah, so that's not the type of thing we're worried about, but if you've got someone from the community that really feels like, oh, hey, if I get their attention while they're talking about this matter that really matters to me, that would be inappropriate. Where you've got a person that's sort of like the, you know, they're this secret voice. So just try not to. I'd recommend just avoiding messaging in a meeting if you can altogether. Okay, so that's on open meetings. That's it for that. Before we move on to ethics, any things you want to ask about or
Ethics
discuss?
this year too, awesome.
We always cover ethics. So again, the Ethics Act has not changed since 2013. I think that when they changed it there was just to add townships. So it's been a really long time since they've amended this. So here, they're in the Ethics Act, they talk about certain things that are criminal, things you can't do and you'll be criminally prosecuted, and then they also talk about things that are potentially just conflicts of interest. So one thing that can be criminal is using your official position to further personal interests or the interests of others.
You know who I am? Just kidding. Sorry.
You laugh, but I remember reading an article. There was a mayor in Utah. I won't say which city, but that did that. He was trying to get someone to back down. It was not related to his job. He was trying to get a person. He said, "You know who I am." And that was like his quote. Bad idea. All right. So don't use your position or title to gain economic or special privileges. So if there's an expectation of, hey, I can never get, if a cop pulls me over, I'll get out of a speeding ticket. Not the case. And if you were to try to use your position to get out of that speeding ticket, that would be a violation of the act. So if you were to say, hey, just so you know, I approve your budget. So you won't commit a speeding ticket. That doesn't, I hope not. And if you were to try it, it's illegal. So, you also can't do so for others. So if you really feel like you want to intervene with staff, with me as a prosecutor or with Noah as in his capacity or something like that, please don't do it. Especially where it's a personal friend or a family member or something, it puts staff in a really difficult position because now they're like, okay, what do I do? Because now I've got a person in a position of authority, and do I give in? Do I stand up? What do I do? So just don't do it. Now our responsibility, and this is elected officials and appointed officials like me. Unlike ordinary business transactions, the city has certain obligations under the Constitution to protect the rights of people that we interact with. And this is where it's different from so if you're in a business transaction, your goal is I'm going to get the best deal possible for my business or my client. We don't have that luxury. We do try to get the best possible deal that we have, but we have limitations, constitutional limitations, where we can't violate those. Citizens have property rights, they have privacy rights. We talked about due process earlier. They have rights that we have to respect, and if we don't respect them, we can be held responsible in court. But we shouldn't have to be held responsible in court. We should be honoring those rights because it's the Constitution, and that's something we stand up for here in America. Developers have rights against unlawful exactions. So it's a serious matter. So just as you conduct yourself and as we conduct ourselves, it's important that we consider constitutionally, are there rights that I'm considering trampling over? And if you're going to make a decision in violation of someone's constitutional rights, then it's the wrong decision. So food for thought as things go forward. If you come across protected or private or controlled information, that could include personal information, or if I write a memo to the council, it's attorney work product, so that's something that's considered a protected document under Utah law. If you were to use those or disseminate them, it would be a violation of the law. So don't do it, especially if you use it for personal gain or to aid or assist someone else. We've got inappropriate gifts or economic benefits. It is unlawful to receive a gift or for someone to offer a gift, which would tend to influence a reasonable person's decision. And it's understood that the gift is given to reward an official action. That's a subjective standard to some extent. What is a reasonable person? How much would it take to buy a vote? That's a good question. Depends on the person, probably, right? Obviously, the answer here is no amount would buy your vote. Economic benefits, as far as the code's concerned, would be includes like loans at below fair market value. If you provide services, it'd be being compensated at a high level than you should. But it excludes an occasional non-pecuniary gift of less than $50. So $50 cash, not okay. But if there's if a person were to present a gift to the council members, and it's occasional, and it's less than $50, then that's excluded under state law. Now, whether you accept a gift like that, you're not gonna be prosecuted for accepting the gift, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you wanna take the gift. You might consider a personal policy of, I'm never gonna accept any gifts from anyone who's transacting business with the city. That's maybe a wise policy. If it's a political campaign contribution, that's different as well. So if a person says, I'd like to contribute to your political campaign, that's lawful. So, and even if they're saying, I like your policies, I like the way you do business, I'd like to contribute, it's lawful. But again, consider the optics of it. Business transactions, if you were to happen to assist someone with a business transaction with the city, you could still sit on the body that makes the decision of whether to approve that transaction or not. But in order to do that, you would need to provide a sworn written disclosure to the mayor. And then anytime it's discussed, you need to orally disclose to the body, hey, by the way, I'll be getting a commission if we approve this document. So I have, by disclosing it. The written disclosure is a public document, and it would need to be provided at least 10 days prior to the transaction or when you get paid, whichever is earlier. This would be really rare. In a case like this, if someone were to ask my opinion, it would be, lawfully you could do it. I would say recuse yourself. There's very few decisions that you want to be involved in to that level. I'd recuse myself. So consequences of violating these provisions can include removal from office. There's a provision in state code where a person could go to court and have you removed from office by a judge. Or you could be criminally investigated or prosecuted. Wouldn't be by me or our police department. We would have a outside agency investigate those, probably the county. And then if there's a contract that was entered into unlawfully, then the city can actually invalidate the contract, and we don't have to pay for what we got. Which is, I guess that's one way to fix your budget problems. Think about it. That's good. No, we wouldn't do that. Now, conflicts of interest, this is not the criminal realm, right? You're not going to be prosecuted for violating these types of things. If you have an interest in a business that's regulated by the city, you might have a conflict of interest, especially if it comes to a specific business regulation that might benefit your city or affect your business, affect your business. Or if you have a business that's doing business with the city, if you have some investment or personal conflicts, these are conflicts. These don't require prosecution if you violate them, but if the council sees that there's a conflict of interest, the council could take action and censure or do something like that to let the member of the body know this is not okay. We don't like that you violate this conflict of interest. If you have a conflict, what you should do is always disclose it. So when you first were brought on, you should have gotten some paperwork, and part of that was, do you have a business in the city, or do you do business with the city? And if you do, disclose it. Let's put it in an official paper, and you disclose your conflicts, and then under that case you're covered. And if something changes, just make sure you update that form. It's always best to disclose early, disclose as often as you need to, because under state law you aren't required to abstain from a decision, but you need to disclose it. And if you think there's been a violation, then the best thing to do is to report it and have the investigation undertaken not during a public meeting. So throwing out an accusation during a public meeting is the worst way to bring something to light, because it just fosters ill will, and it's more chaotic. So if you think there's a concern, go through the proper channels. If you think that, so for instance, if you think I have a conflict of interest, you would report that to the mayor, and he would investigate. He wouldn't have me investigate it. He would have someone else investigate it. If you think that there's, sometimes the reason that we go through the proper channels is there might be a difference between what the law requires and what you think is proper or right, and that's why we have the proper channels. Now, if you want a legal opinion about a conflict of interest or something like that, ethics, you can come and talk to me about it, and we can consult. Give me all the facts that you can, and I can give you an opinion as to whether there's a conflict. Should you disclose it? Should you recuse yourself? Things like that. If you committed a crime, I owe a duty to the city, not to you personally. So don't tell me if you committed a crime, because I would need to report that to the city. Now, if you're going to allege that another member of the council has done something unethical, that does not come to me, because I need to advise the body, and I don't want the body to think that I'm investigating and going after them. So, if that happened, then we would have, an outside person investigate, probably, like a third party, not even government. Yeah, if that happened, we could have them investigate. Another way to address that is you can even, submit a complaint to the Lieutenant Governor's office, to the Political Subdivisions Ethics Review Commission. And it's a statewide body that if you've got an elected official that's being accused of something wrong, you can bring it to that commission, and they would investigate. They can issue subpoenas, they take evidence, and they would make a decision as to whether a person violated ethical requirements. And then I think the commission then refers it back to the body that would be able to take action on it. So they can't remove you or censure you, but they would like issue a decision essentially, and then tell the council, hey, this council member was fine, or hey, this council member violated ethical rules, and then they leave it to the council.
Can the mayor require staff to disregard a subpoena? Just wondering.
Probably not. Executive privilege, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
It's never been done.
No. Just curious.
It hasn't come up here. Yeah, good question. We'd have to look.
I've seen it happen
I'd have to look at
recently, so I was just wondering.
I'd have to look at the facts and give you an opinion. Okay, any questions or discussion about either of these topics? Thank you. Sorry to cover the same ground again, but again, the law is not changing.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
No.
We
No,
already
this
asked
is
you, and
valid.
You said you didn't say you had any questions.
I don't have well, I do have a question. How can I possibly get a record of this recorded so that I don't have to go through this 3 more times? Once for the sewer board, once for the arts council.
You just have to sit through it.
Or just skip.
But I do have to say, we sometimes have problems getting our certificate.
I know, that's what I've had
And
problems out there.
even though I signed the roll that I was there, and the people never issued a certificate, so now
Yeah.
I'm going to be asking Paul, can you issue us a certificate that we can say, yes, we've had this training.
Yes, recognition.
You can
Can we
create
do
it.
that? Because
We've done that before.
the auditor's office has called us before.
Yeah.
Cause we have, at the sewer board, we always do it at a conference they hold in St. George. And so we go to that meeting, we sign the roll, and there have been times when they're like, yeah, they lost the roll, so everybody needs to do it again. I'm like, what? You know, so that certificate I can turn into them would be awesome.
I just want a framed one for my wall.
Yeah, sure. I'll make it pretty.
It doesn't have to be pretty though. It can be very basic.
Yeah, I think I've issued one of those, 2 of those before in the past.
You did for me.
Was it for you? Okay, maybe one for you, David.
Because
too.
I wasn't
Yeah,
at.
they
Couple years
did,
ago?
the auditor's office didn't take it though.
Oh, they didn't?
They did
Really?
not,
What?
they made me do it again online.
It's issued by the
Well, you
Syracuse
just don't have the
PD
clout.
attorney.
I don't.
Just saying.
It's open in meetings.
What good is that law degree on my wall?
They accepted mine from the.
I don't know, what is it?
It was still open meetings training.
I know,
Insane.
but I had to do it one of the years, I think 2 years ago, I had to repeat it online.
They were
But
like,
can I
oh, that
tell
was
you,
from Paul. Doesn't count.
Your version is much shorter than Mosquito Baby.
Oh, that's the
took
problem.
two
You're
hours.
saying more thorough.
They did 2 hours of
The
talking
sewer
about
board one, they
himself
spend, yeah, a
and
long
his kid,
time.
and I was like,
Okay.
seriously?
Let's run around the
Okay,
horn.
sorry.
Do you have anything, announcements? Seth? anything you can talk about?
I attended a Clearfield Job Corps meeting today. I'll be sending out a report on that, but I just am so amazed at the good that they are doing. I had no idea, and they're getting some really great things coming their way, so.
I heard a complaint from a local trade specialist that says they teach the kids trades and then Florida sweeps them all away.
Oh, there's only 4 that have been recruited out to Florida,
Is
so.
that right? Okay.
And that was actually, Lockheed Martin who snatched them
Okay.
up and gave them a $62,000 sign-on bonus and
That's awesome.
4-year scholarship to their college.
Lisa?
I went to the Schneider's Bluff Golf Course to check out the facility for the event for communities that care, and it's going to be really fantastic. So, and lots of good ideas. And I just want to go on record as just in saying that all of the stuff that Paul just talked about, it's really lovely to sit here with people that I think know that we're doing with those things. So that means don't prove me wrong. But, but I'm just grateful for the caliber of people that I.
For your benefit, Lisa, Jess Bigler has asked me to contact Mayor Craythorne and go to him and talk to him about this elimination.
Good.
Would you like to go to that?
Sure.
Yeah, I'll send you an invite.
Okay.
Jordan?
So we have the CERT class in full swing, so we have the biggest class we have ever had.
Wow.
We have, I think over 20.
Wow.
And
But without job work? They're not doing
No-
that
no job
anymore,
work.
right? That was
No,
kinda like
these
the
are all
issue.
Syracuse residents, so big class, it's exciting to see it, just a lot of interest in that. So, the other thing, well, a couple of things. So, what happened, so I know that we talked about the naming of the park, the linear park. I guess I'd like to see, I guess I don't know what's going
You were
on
supposed
there.
to bring back names and we were gonna vote on them.
Yeah, you were.
That was your assignment.
The,
Parks Committee.
Parks Committee.
Dang it.
Way to bring that out.
No, I'm glad because I missed something, so thank you.
It's always best to call yourself out, you know.
Yes, no, so thank you.
Specifically, I think there was gonna be some,
We wanted to have a-
maybe coordinating with the junior high to see if the kids wanna.
I wasn't clear, I guess what I'm saying is I was not clear on what the path forward was.
Yeah, we'd like the Parks Advisory Board.
Okay, so Parks and Rec, so I guess we'll combine that in that same meeting. And the same thing, I don't know how to.
Reach out to schools and then narrow it, the Parks
Yeah,
Advisory
we'll do.
Committee would narrow it down to like.
Yeah.
That's right,
Yeah.
thank you
Brought
for
back
reminding
to
me.
the council.
So yeah, same thing, I don't know how to bring the Parks Advisory Committee together, so I would love your help with that.
Okay.
And I want 3 legitimate ones, not like Jordan Park, Savage Park, and one other.
I don't care what you think.
Savage
I'm just
Park-
kidding.
Savage Park sounds pretty cool,
Savage
actually.
Park, yeah, where's your sense of,
Savage is a
Really
good name.
really quick.
he wants the Mon Park.
One thing that Clearfield Job Corps is wanting is more businesses, by the way, to help with some of their students' training. And of course, it'd have to be the right fit, but like, they get them 80% of the way, and then the last 20 they want on the job training. So if we can possibly, I mean, I just know with unemployment being a big deal, maybe we could also let the chamber know, whoever businesses, local businesses know that
When we
there's a possibility.
went to lunch with them, we talked to them about US cold storage.
Yes.
And then maybe creating some kind of a dynamic between them and US cold storage with the kids.
Okay.
We did talk to them about that.
Is there any connection we can make between our seasonal employment and job work?
I don't know if like lawn care is in there, you know, that's not exactly.
When we talk to them, sometimes,
But like automotive is.
yeah, some might be able to do that if it's like on the weekends.
Oh, not
And
really.
so we have to look at, having weekend supervisors out there.
Oh.
So we might have to look at the scheduling and see if that can.
Okay, as far as like for the city, but as far as private businesses, you know,
Oh.
that they have a different program. And
Yeah,
they
yeah.
even pay the person to come work for you, say
Yeah.
for instance.
I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about the city.
I was
No.
talking about the city, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would love to, for
Several,
that, but.
several thoughts going on here,
Sorry.
I crisscrossed wrong.
Okay.
Also, Corinne, are you doing the, police academy with me?
Yes.
Okay, we're starting tomorrow, we're gonna be tased, you guys.
You'll love it.
Oh,
Really?
that's a problem.
You're gonna love it.
I'm in that class too.
Don't discuss city business, it's not a public meeting.
Well, okay, no talking.
You can talk, it's not about.
It's
just
just
next
not
week.
about any city business,
Right.
okay.
Do you have anything?
That's all I had, sorry.
That's, I'm done.
I've got one thing for you. Brody has been spearheading a discussion with county representatives and with North Davis Fire District about paramedics. As I understand it, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that group wants to form a committee of elected officials to further discuss this issue and go forward. For the time being, I'd like to assign you to that task, if you would, and Brody will be your contact. and we'll bring you into that discussion as they begin to occur.
Yeah, I guess the only clarification is they may want to form. It's not a foregone
It's not-
conclusion
Yeah,
yet.
it isn't.
Well, let me know.
But it
Okay.
is likely.
But with your relationship with the fire department and with, I'd like you there if you're available.
It'll really depend on when the meetings are, if I'm
Yeah.
available or not, but yeah.
Okay. I don't have anything. Brody, do you have anything more?
So we've been following legislation. There's some, overall, this is actually a lighter year than what we've seen in the last couple of years.
It
but,
feels worse.
There are a couple of bills, one that Paul and I discussed today, probably the single biggest one that we may solicit your involvement in, is HB 273, regarding property rights ombudsman and what it can do to cities if it goes to court after that. Paul's gonna put together a little, brief on what it means for us and what it means for, cities and eventually residents if it passes, so that we can use that to talk to legislators. And so be looking out for that. We'll be contacting you about that, depending on which direction it takes as these things go.
ULCT
Do
also
you think
wanted
that
to-
one was gonna pass though?
I thought ULCT said no, right?
I
They
kinda-
were
yeah, I kinda-
chilling effect
They-
and weaponizing.
So we're opposing it
They're
as a
opposing
league,
it.
for
Yeah,
sure.
good.
Yeah, the question is, will the legislature
Will they
pass it
listen?
anyway?
It seems to be, supported by the House leadership. So we think it does have a chance of actually passing, even though the league's opposing it. So that's what's.
They also wanted your input, any city attorney input on SB 169, on the transportation utility fee.
One other item, I have 2 of your political signs in my office. I need to give them to you.
From when?
You
Not
don't want-
revisiting
You
them.
don't want it?
No, I don't.
Does that mean you're not running anymore?
I don't think, I know.
She doesn't want the signs, it's
They're
like you're
they're
saying.
so pretty.
They are pretty, good colors, but.
Well, let's stand adjourned for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Initial funds.
So we need to get some recommendations.
I was looking at my assignments, and I was trying to find, backtrack through.
Names.